Guys, we are Onscreen Offscreen, and this week we're talking about our top 10 TV shows. We're glad that you guys could join us. Um, as we're going, talk about any of the shows we list, talk about why you think we're right, why you think we're wrong, and when we get to our number ones, why Josh is completely wrong. We'll get there in just a little bit. What are your top? What are?
I'm completely
We're
right.
going.
And this for me was the hardest list to make. Mostly because my top three are really solid, but after that, there's like 20 shows that I could see going in my top 10. So it was actually really hard to get narrowed
Yeah,
down.
so we actually cheated a little bit and we went all the way to 11. And I literally just removed one of my shows because I couldn't decide either. It was hard. So let's go through yours first. What are your 11 through 6, Josh?
Okay, so my number 11 is
Okay.
Chernobyl. I originally created this 11 slot because I couldn't justify leaving Chernobyl
Okay.
off. Like, but I also couldn't justly say that it was better than these other shows. So that's why I threw it in with a 11 because when I saw it, it was so good. I instantly burned through it. I loved it. I immediately reached out to everybody and was like, "You have to watch this show." So for that reason, I was like, I can't leave it off my list, but I also can't say that I enjoyed it better than the rest of these. So anyway, that's number 11. That's why that spot was created, and I'm sure that with your number 11, you're grateful to have that 11th spot as well.
Absolutely.
Uh, my number 10 is Top Gear slash the Grand Tour. I'm combining the two, even though they're technically two different shows, because I'm talking about the trio of Richard Hammond, Jeremy Clarkson, and James May in car adventures around the world. Um, so I did cheat on that one too as well. Number 9 of Haunting on Hill House. Number 8, Parks and Recreation. 7, Devil is a Part Timer. And number 6, Star Wars Rebels.
Solid, solid list. We share some of these. I have Star Wars Rebels on my list. I have Chernobyl on my list. Um, I debated Haunting of Hill House for a little bit. Really, really good shows. A lot of people would put quite a few shows above Parks and Rec in that genre. Why is that one so high for you versus thousands of other sitcoms?
It's not my highest sitcom on the list. Um, Number one, obviously for me, but everybody likes to compare Parks and Rec to The Office to New Girl to Brooklyn Nine Nine. Those are kind of the four that kind of get grouped together because of the time that they came out and the style of comedy that it is. Um, so for me, it boils down to The Office and Parks and Rec
Okay.
because New Girl has its moments, but really a lot of it is not that great. And the other one I just named, I can't even think of right now. Oh, Brooklyn Nine Nine. Uh, Fantastic for like 2 seasons, and then not so great. And then I even stopped watching it when it got to the COVID episodes. So yeah. Um, to me, my thing has always been The Office is constantly this funny. You know, it's constantly a 7 out of 10 funny until Michael leaves. It's pretty consistent. Um, but Parks and Rec has the higher highs. It is when it makes you laugh, it makes you actually laugh. The scene with Andy and saying, hey, I put your symptoms into the computer and it says you might have network connectivity issues, will make me laugh every single time. And finding out that that was an improv line was great.
I
Um,
actually didn't know that. That's awesome.
Finding out that, yeah, another improv thing from the show is when Andy flashes, um, knocks on the door naked.
Really?
He was originally scripted, like they had him in like this underwear thing, and his line of thinking was, "They're not reacting to seeing my penis at all." So he, without telling them, took off his thing, and they were like, he got pulled into their like HR and was like, "Look, it was funny, and we're gonna keep the footage, but you can't be doing that because they have to give consent." Um, So yeah, just the funnies in Parks and Rec are so so funny. And then I think like on average it's only slightly below the Office and probably flirts the line with the Office on its
Okay.
average. So that's why Parks and Rec
Uh, That's
landed
some good
there.
reasoning. I don't really like The Office that much. I like clips of The Office. I think clips of The Office are hilarious, but the actual show I find tedious. Parks and Rec, I didn't get into because I watched the first season, and the first season of that show is honestly super rough in my opinion. But later on, as the show goes on, people told me that, and I went into season two, and after that point, I think it is hilarious. It's a great show.
I wouldn't say it is super rough. Like I don't think I'd give it that qualifier. It is definitely more rough and they definitely had to refine it. Getting rid of the Mark character and bringing in Ben was honestly the biggest swinging point where they kind of actually found their groove, um, and was able to kind of make it its own show. Whereas, like, when Parks and Rec was being created, it was being created as a The Office spinoff. Um, it was originally going to be the paper company. It was originally going to have, I forgot her name. She plays Karen in The Office. I don't remember what her name is in Parks and Rec right now, but it was going to be a spin-off and they were still kind of just trying to figure out their footing, but I think early on it still had some really good moments, and then like I said, when Ben enters the show, it takes off and it becomes a truly great show. And I feel like a lot of shows do the exact opposite. They kind of figure out what's really good and then they say, "Oh, well, let's try something new or let's do something different or this actor kind of wants to move on so we're going to change," and ends up ruining. Like a lot of shows go down over time. Parks and Rec goes up over time and honestly, I think it's consistently all the way to the end. I don't feel like it steps down after that point. It's just really good all the way to
I
the end.
agree, man. I agree. So, um, Chernobyl, I also agree it's a great show. What do you think about it was so special? Because I agree. That's something great about it, but I can't even completely tell you exactly what that was.
It's the way that it tells the story. So Chernobyl, the HBO series is the one that we're talking about. Um, Many people haven't heard of it. I hadn't heard of it for a long time. I went down a rabbit hole of Chernobyl history, actually, and I discovered this show and I bought it on Amazon. And I also bought a Ghost Hunters episode about Chernobyl.
That's cool.
And I was honestly just interested in learning more about Chernobyl. So Reddit had suggested this show as being fairly historically accurate and to give a shot. And so I was like, okay, it's HBO. I'm sure it's not bad, I'll give it a shot. And the way that it tells the story and the pacing and the perspective and the real history, like not everybody knows where Chernobyl is. Not everybody knows the history of Chernobyl. Not everybody even understands what Chernobyl is. But everybody has heard the name
That's
Chernobyl.
true.
Um, so And like people will reference Chernobyl without fully understanding what it is as well. It often comes up in conversations, obviously, about nuclear power and why it's so dangerous and all this kinds of stuff. But often I find those to be less than educated about the actual pacing of events that happened with Chernobyl. But neither here nor there. I thought it was just an extremely great story. The writing was brilliant. The pacing was brilliant. Um, Having 45 minute episodes was perfect. There's nothing I would add or subtract from that show. And then visually, they put in so much work to make it beautiful, yet dark and gloomy at the same time in the, that kind of world that they're telling the story of. And then I had the pleasure of the writer of Chernobyl was releasing a podcast alongside when the show was coming out on HBO. And so I actually had the pleasure of watching an episode, listening to an episode of his podcast where he talked about the story, talked about the changes he made, why he changed them. Like one of the questions he was asked in this podcast was, why did you allow the British and American and Australian, like, the different accents? Why didn't you make them sound Russian? And he talked about how, like, because he found it more
Hmm.
offensive and a little bit too, like, comic booky and took you away when it was an actor doing a Russian accent versus when he just delivered the line and, spoke the way that they spoke with, of course, the use of the word comrade, very, very Russian. They still use that word, they just didn't use the Russian accent. So it was very cool to listen alongside. So cool, absolutely amazing. Um, every second of that show is great, and so that's why I think that one is so special. Is because even my number one, I don't think every second is great.
That's fair, man. I agree.
Chernobyl, every second
Yeah,
is
there's
great.
nothing I would change about that show. The pacing is perfect. The visuals of that show are really haunting. The atmosphere of the show is haunting. Um, and the acting is phenomenal.
Yeah,
I can,
and the writing and
yes,
direction, just all
it's
of it
so
is
good.
great. It's very high budget HBO greatness.
So,
So
where
I
there's
love it.
literally nothing you would change about this show, why is it not higher? For me, it's number 8, and I debated putting it higher to be completely honest. Why is it lower on the list for you?
Well, let's talk about the other shows on my list. So we've got Grand Tour
Yeah.
and Top Gear, right? Like I have literally been watching that show my entire life. Chernobyl I watched
Okay,
twice,
that's fair.
and the second time it was not as enjoyable as the first time. Haunting of Hill House. That show, when I finished watching it, I instantly wanted to go back through it
Yeah.
again. I ended up, you know, watching YouTube videos and figuring out more lore and more story and all of these. Oh, where's every ghost? What ghost did I miss spotting? All that kind of stuff. Parks and Rec, like I said, I can watch again and again and again, and certain things are always going to make me laugh. Devil's a Part Timer made me fall in love with anime. Like, I had watched a couple of anime ahead of that time. Devil's a Part Timer is the one that made me love it. And then Star Wars Rebels, it introduced and built on my second favorite Star Wars character of all time and gave me such hope for a IP that was really struggling for me. So, I mean, that's just a little bit about each of those shows, and I'd love to talk more about them, but that's why Chernobyl doesn't outrank those. is mostly it comes down to it's a great show, it's perfect, but it was ultimately like a once in a while kind of watch, and there's no outside meaning to it
And
to
it's an
me
amazing show,
other
but
than the
yeah, it doesn't
history.
have as much impact to you personally, to your life, right? Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, so when we get to number 1, I will tell you that my number 1 is my personal number 1, but I don't think it's the best show of all
That's
time,
exactly how I am too.
right? There's a quality to it that is not there, that is in other shows, but it's special to me, so therefore it's number 1.
That's
So I can distinguish that, and that's where the opposite for Chernobyl. It's also slipping down because it doesn't have that outside meaning.
that makes complete sense. I wanted to ask you about Devil as a Part-Timer. I've watched this show because you suggested this show, but I don't think a lot of people even know what it is. Even anime fans that I talk to haven't seen this show. Can you explain what it is, why you liked it so much? Just brief overview.
Yeah, so it's about Satan coming to Earth through a portal and getting stuck in modern day Tokyo and losing his powers, so he gets a part time job at McDonald's. Um, the reason I don't think a lot of anime fans have heard of it, or not a lot of people have heard of it, is because it had one season, it had a little cult following, but it didn't really pick up enough fandom to keep going, so they canceled it. And then years and years and years and years later, it got rebooted for a season 2, which I actually think that they did really well with, even though most shows that get picked up after a long time kind of lose their touch. This one was great. It was such a good add on to it. It was perfect. Um, yeah, Devil's a Part Timer. I love those quirky, weird, uh, lighthearted, rom comish animes. I don't really get into the more serious. Like, I don't like Death Note at all. I thought it was not entertaining. Did not get into it. I did get into Attack on Titan. Um, that one could have made my list. Love is War also could have made my list. Tomo Chan is a girl also could have made my list. Um, one of yours on your list could have made my list, but like Devil's a Part Timer has that made me love it. My first anime I watched, I was like 18 or 19. It was Sword Art Online. That's what got me into anime. Attack on Titan got me coming back to anime, and Devil's a Part Timer was like, I can find my niche. We talked about movies. I had two early 2000s, late 90s rom coms on my list. Like that is such a niche for me. That is such my thing. I love it. It's so great. And Devil's a Part Timer is just that. I also think that it just would apply to like so many people could watch it and enjoy it, even if you're not an anime fan. I could go up and be like, "Do you like Hallmark movies?" Like this is an anime Hallmark movie
It
almost,
kind
you
of
know?
is. I didn't think about
Um,
that, but it kind of is.
yeah, yeah. I mean, not exactly. It does have a little anime ness to it, but it's definitely not full
No,
anime
it's not.
ness. So
That's
yeah,
cool, man. It's a really good show. It's funny, like genuinely funny. There's a lot of shows that I feel like don't pace their humor well. Office is one of those to me. I don't think the humor is paced out well at all. But in Devil as a Part Timer, it's funny, 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 funny. You have a couple little dramatic moment. It's not cut tension by the funny. It's actually written well, and then it handles the funny really, really purposefully. It's yeah,
it does. It helps build the characters rather than just make a
exactly,
joke.
exactly. It actually has a purpose behind why it is funny. I love
Yeah,
it. Star Wars Rebels is pretty high on my list. If I had to do my favorite Star Wars properties of all time, Knights of the Old Republic would be my favorite, but Rebels is probably my second favorite. I think I like it better than the even the original trilogy, which is saying a lot. What brought this to be on your list? Why do you love it so much? Tell me more.
It's not my favorite Star Wars property at all. Like, if I were to rank just everything Star Wars, you've got KOTOR 1 would probably be my number one. You've got two out of the three original trilogy movies. I'd go Empire, Return. Then I'd say Rogue One. Then A New Hope. And then Rebels and Clone Wars would be really
Okay.
close for me. Um, Rebels is not higher on my list because I think the first 1.5 seasons are really
Yep.
rough. Um, I am not a fan of the Inquisitor storyline. Um, to me, it was a betrayal of everything that Lucas had built and what all this writing was that had already been created. And they weren't really sure what they wanted to be. They weren't really sure if they wanted to be a kids show or a teen show or a young adult show. Like, they couldn't figure it out, and there was a lot of kind of, we're going to pick up fuel again. Also, not something I was super happy with. Um, but Clone Wars predated the Disney, so when Rebels came out and I was getting into Rebels, I was really down. I started watching Rebels after Force Awakens, right? So I was very concerned with where Star Wars was going. I was not happy with any of the Star Wars games that had come out since the Disney takeover. Them signing an exclusivity contract to EA instantly pissed me off and was a terrible, terrible decision. Just awful. And then Rebels comes out and I'm watching along and it gets better and it gets better and it gets better. And they bring back Ahsoka, my second favorite Star Wars character of all time, and implements her just perfectly. Oh my goodness. It was absolutely astounding the way that they grew her character off screen without being so jarring. It changed the way you looked at her. Um, then introduced me to Ezra, and I was sitting there like, I was one of those people who was like, I think Ezra's the other one that Yoda was talking about. He was the one who also could have. There is another,
Yeah.
right? And so I was just so, so drawn into that. I thought they decided to take those steps perfectly. Its highs are just so high that the lows of the first 1.5 seasons um, are totally worth it. The Obi-Wan Maul uh, completion fight is just brilliant. You watch that, and the first time I watched it, I was like, "Oh man, that was kind of short. I wish they could have done more." I mean, it was this beautiful moment with the singular campfire and the glowing of the blades, but like, man, I would have loved a you know Maul Sidious style fight in that, and then you end up looking into it and they analyze it and they talk about how Obi-Wan goes through the different forms and the voiceover, how it switches from Ewan McGregor to the voice actor to, oh, I forgot he plays Obi-Wan in the original trilogy. Um, just so brilliant cinematography when you do it. The scene between Ahsoka and Vader with the half
It's so
cut,
cool.
um, it's
It's
so
so
cool.
cool.
And to anybody who says that Kenobi did it better, you're wrong. It was a cheap pull off, and I hate Kenobi for it. Moving on from that point, I said my piece about it. Rebels is just like, seeing that for the first time was holy crap, And then everything else that's in it.
The whole last season.
In it, they introduced um, or they brought back from the Clone Wars the owl at the end of it, which made me go on my little Star Wars nerdiness little theory that Ahsoka was going to take up the mantle of the sister and reestablish balance and all that kind of stuff, which Disney totally screwed up, and I hate them. Um, but Rebels is still great. Rebels and Clone Wars to me are the two Star Wars things that I can still watch and enjoy without being ruined by the Disneyness of it. Um,
Did
Movies, even the original trilogy, have been hurt, but Rebels and Clone Wars are just different. So I can still enjoy them, even though the Ahsoka show wasn't great. I still love Ahsoka.
I was gonna ask you about that because I debated lowering it on my list because I hate the Ahsoka show. I hate that show. To me, how um, the Last Jedi ruined Star Wars for you, Ahsoka was the death knell, kill me now of Star Wars, and I had waited. I watched Rebels when it came out, and the fourth season ends, and there's a major cliffhanger. And I had been waiting. I had theorized. I had hoped. I had dreamed. I had with every ounce of me, wanted something great. I wanted these answers. And then we get Ahsoka, and it absolutely pissed me off. Did that sway your love of of Rebels at all? Did it shift anything for you?
It shifted things, but not in my
Okay.
love for it. So for me, The Last Jedi was the nail in the coffin for anything main
Okay.
Star Wars. After The Last Jedi, I was on the bandwagon of so long as Kathleen Kennedy is not involved, and so long as Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are running it, and all that kind of stuff, I was still fully on board with Star Wars as an IP. I just truly, truly believed that they needed to remove Kathleen Kennedy from the picture, and it would improve. Um, Ahsoka to me was the final nail in the coffin that ruined Star Wars and why I can't say I'm a Star Wars fan anymore, why I don't spend my time making my own Star Wars theories or digging into it or really anticipating the next game or show or whatever. Um, because of Ahsoka, I think it definitely hurt um, the frequency that I could
Hmm.
watch the show. Um, I haven't watched Rebels since I saw Ahsoka, but I still love Rebels, and that cliffhanger, even today, is still a brilliant piece of animation and cinematography and writing. Um, to me, when you're ranking like animated Star Wars, right? You have Rebels season finale, season 4 season
Absolutely.
finale. That's number 1.
Absolutely.
Period,
It's
end of story,
so freaking good.
right? It's so good, right? And then you have, right, some Clone Wars moments, right? You can make an argument between the Disney season finale or the Netflix season finale or the original season finale or uh to me I loved the um Clone Wars focused storyline episodes, the one that starts with rookies. I think that's the best episode of Clone Wars. Um but you've also got, of course, the fight between, Maul and
That's my
Palpatine
favorite
and
episode of
Savage.
Clone Wars. I love that whole
You know,
storyline. I
it's
love that storyline.
it's brilliant, it's amazing, it's great, but all of those are kind of interchangeable. You've also got a lot of Rebels moments that you can throw in there
Yeah,
too.
for sure.
But neither of us are going to argue that season 4 finale of Rebels is number 1
It
spot,
is.
you know. Um so yeah, that's why it made it that high on my list, but also why it didn't quite crack my top 5.
I like it. I think that is a good start. I will go over my 11 through 6. Oh,
Do
yeah, go ahead.
you mind? I want to talk about Haunting of Hill
Okay, go
House
ahead.
right now. Because you took your um originally Midnight Mass had made your
Yep.
list, and Haunting of Hill House is still on my list. I would love for you to share why you think Midnight Mass is somehow better than Haunting of Hill
The
House.
idea, and this is major spoiler. If you haven't seen the show, skip ahead a couple minutes. I when I came across the idea of a vampire priest who was using his own blood as sacrament for the people, and that's why they were getting healed. I didn't see that twist coming, and I was like, it was so obvious. I saw it and I was like, why hasn't anyone done this before? Why is this not in a book? Why is this not in a show? I love vampires. I always have. I have since I was a kid. Vampires are awesome. And this idea is so simple and so brilliant. I was absolutely floored. When I saw that idea, I was like, "What a great idea! Let's go!" Um, and I love the pacing of the show. I love the tension of the show. I love the slow build. I love the acting. I think Haunting of Hill House is also an absolutely excellent show. It really is. But that singular idea, and that idea is kind of the premise of the whole show. And the way that they deal with religion, and I actually think they deal with it in a pretty respectful way while also getting into the critiques of religion in a way.
I don't
Oh,
think they
really? I
do.
do. And I think
I would disagree with that
that
completely.
they are. It's an intelligent show. It's written intelligently, and then you have that central idea that just absolutely floored me, and I loved it.
It is a great show. I'm not going to argue that. Midnight Mass would be an honorable mention for me. I just think that you not seeing the twist is a little silly because it was so
I know it was
obvious.
so obvious. I feel stupid not seeing it, and it's if other people, anyone in the comments can call me an idiot for not seeing that. I should have, but it was an idea that I never even thought it. I can't believe I didn't think about this. Um,
I agree.
yeah,
I had also not thought of that as a concept, um, but it was like episode 2 or something. It was really early on. I think the biggest problem with the show is actually how slow
that's
it
fair.
is, because it is a slow build, and sometimes it's a really good slow build, and I feel like they're doing a lot with that time, and other times I don't think that they
Other
are.
times it's
Um,
slow
More
just for
than
being
once
slow.
I got
Okay.
bored. Um, so that to me is the problem with the show. I still think it's a good twist because I still had doubt. Um, I was like, oh, it's a vampire, but maybe not. Like maybe there's something with this religious thing. I'm not sure. But yeah. Anyway, go ahead. Let's get started. 11 through 6 for
My
you.
11 is Your Lie in April. 10 is Outlander. 9 is The Expanse. 8 is Chernobyl. 7's Arcane. And 6 is Breaking Bad.
Okay. My questions, I'm going to go straight in order
Okay.
for you. Your Lie in April. That would have been my other honorable mention. I watched it because of you. I have literally never met anybody else who had heard of this show, even some of the biggest anime fans ever. How would you pitch this show in a way that might get people to watch it?
You know how music can move a person? It can shift your emotions. It can help you go through hard things. It can help you change. There's literally an entire career that's called music therapy, where they go and they help old people as they're passing and play the music for them and help them go through traumatic experiences, help them close up some of the gaps in their life, help them find peace. And you have a main character who was playing music and trying to have that music be like a prayer to save their mom. And they just keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and the mom still dies. How does that kid deal with that? That's part of the show. How do you deal with those times where you failed, or those times where you're not seeing the world in the right way, and how music can clarify those moments in our life, how they can express emotion, how they can bring back, how you hear that one song and you remember that time in high school that was great in your life, or that one breakup that you went through, and you go and look at it in a completely different way. That is this show. It is a magical experience that was unlike anything else I had ever experienced. I hadn't watched any romance anime, anything like that really before I watched this show, and then I went on this huge kick. But it fundamentally spoke to a deeper part of me. And if you love music, if you love good characters, if you love interesting developments in a person and how they can move forward after trauma, and you love that kind of thing, this show is incredible. Is there anything else that you would add?
For me, I got not nearly as deep with it. I loved the show, but to me, it was all more about just processing trauma. Like, it's all about that. It's all about the relationships in your life that can really pull you out of dark places. Um, to me, the mother part of the storyline isn't what makes it great. I think it takes away from it a little bit. Um, but I just got something completely different out of the show, and I think that that might be the biggest selling point for it right there. That we both just got something truly meaningful in completely
Yeah,
different ways.
it's a wonderful show, and the very end sequence of this show has two of our main characters playing music together, and it is probably the most beautiful thing I've seen on a screen for me. It it absolutely captivated me and made me made me think about what greatness really is and if greatness can go beyond divided lines. I had two brothers pass away, and I think about when I do fantastic things, are they playing along with me? It it's a show that everyone should just give a try to and see what you think. I think it's great.
It's only one season long. Each episode isn't very long. You don't need to give it a try. Just watch it. I think at the very least, you'll listen to classical music for the next
Yeah, for
week.
sure. I still do.
Yeah. All right. Number 10, Outlander. Not the most popular show on your list. Um, how'd that make your list?
So I tried watching Outlander multiple times. It's a show that my mom is obsessed with. She loves this show, and she kept telling me to watch it. And I'd watch the first couple episodes and honestly be bored out of my mind. So slow. Did not like it at all. Um, my dad, who watches the show with my mom, said just skip ahead to episode 6. And that's where they go back in time for the first time. And all of a sudden, this show started to get interesting. And I started reading about the history, and the author has done a lot of research, and she tries to keep it really close to historical events of the time period while keeping it interesting with the connectivity of the characters and how you're invested in their specific lives. Everything feels authentic to the time period. She is a woman during the time period who has to suffer in ways that she wouldn't in our today's society. And they don't play that as a poor as me. She still tries to stay strong, but it's written in a way where she can do that and be in this society. There's times where the man of the show has to take charge in a way that would not be permissible now. And I'm honestly surprised women like this show as much as they do because it's very correct to the time period. The war scenes are really well done. The acting is incredible. The way that they intertwine the characters in these historical events is very very smart. It's a show that if you're a guy, I would highly recommend just skip the first 6 episodes because it is like bad Hallmark to me. But then it becomes something that is absolutely fantastic. It made me read the books, and I actually like the TV show better than the books. It's one of the only shows that I've ever seen that way because they cut out a lot of the fluff of the books and just tell you the core story. The core story is very well done.
So, a common complaint that we both have about some of these more popular animes is the argument that, oh, you just have to get through so and so episodes and then it gets good. You're talking about 6 episodes there. That's not a small amount of the
Yeah, and the
show.
thing,
What makes this different
I
than
get
that?
there's some hypocrisy here because I've said that a million different times. Um, to me, the first 6 episodes are this. This is the first 6 episodes. She finds a way to go back in time, and she has a husband that lives there in in present time, and she leaves that husband to go back in time. There's your first 6 episodes. You're welcome. Just go to the rest. You don't need any other information, and that information is shown to you in the previously on last episode. So you can watch the previously and then watch the show, in my opinion. Those first 6 episodes aren't even necessary.
Okay. All right, The Expanse. The Expanse to me is a show that is really, really good. Absolutely amazing. Cannot put it down until it just rips off Halo. How do you uh, justify having it number 9?
So I've always liked space shows. I like Stargate. I like Star Trek. I like all of those kind of shows. And The Expanse is the most real feeling of all of those. It feels like it could be our future. I like the political intrigue of the show. Um, I like this mystery of what is this weird virus type thing that's spreading? What is that? How does it work? And they give you enough clues along the way that it keeps you enticed and keeps you going step after step after step. Um, I even like the Halo Gate thing. It is kind of a ripoff, not gonna lie, it is, but they do it in a really good way. I like the space travel aspect that's added to it and this other universe that they come to connect with. I like how that changes the political dynamic of these people that are left on Earth and how you have this Martian belt that has been the second class citizens of this whole entire story, and they get a foothold because of this new gigantic change that nobody could have predicted. That's they use the Halo idea, but they apply it to this universe in a very unique way that helps the story flow.
Stupid way. Stupid way.
He's
Oh,
wrong. He's
sorry.
wrong.
What?
It's very well done. And
It's
it
not well
is.
done. It is an absolute riot. It is totally real up until that point, and then it's a giant snooze
I do
fest.
not agree at all. I actually think the show keeps a good pace throughout the entire thing. The
Oh
only
no, it
problem I
definitely
have
does
with
not.
this show is there are 3 more books that are fantastic, but they end before they do these next 3 books, and the ending is honestly just okay. There's some cliffhangers that are left because I think they were trying to get another season of the show. It's an okay ending. It's not great, and they didn't do the last 3 books that does have a great ending. Other than that, I think it's great.
It is absolutely worth watching up until the Halos
It
arrive.
is
That's
absolutely
all
worth
I'll say.
watching throughout the entire thing.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Moving on. We talked about Chernobyl
Hmm.
a little bit. Is there any more reason why this made it onto your list over some of these honorable shows or above, your Lie in April?
It made me want to dig deeper into shows like this. A lot of times I'd watch shows like Outlander or Expanse, these grand stories, instead of something that's a little bit smaller. It's what is it, six episodes, 8 episodes, five? Oh, is
5.
it only five? 5 episodes. A little bit smaller story, but done so well in this smaller scape, and it introduced me to that kind of a show, and I started to really dig into those kinds of shows, like Bands of Brothers I'd never seen before. That's fantastic. Um, I watched a couple of them on Netflix that are really really good, and I wouldn't have gotten those experiences because I would have kept going to shows like The Expanse, like Outlander, that are more sprawling epics.
Okay. All right, let's talk about 6 and
All right,
7. First things first. How in the world, some people will say, how did Breaking Bad make it so low? I say, how did it make it onto a list like this at all? And how is it possible that Breaking Bad beats out Arcane?
Arcane only has one season, and it's a fantastic season. I'm not going to say it's not. Obviously, it's great. Like, anybody who says it's not is an idiot. Breaking Bad has one bad episode, only one. Everything else about that show I think is great. I know you disagree with me, but I think you disagree typically because of taste. You don't like the fact that you're kind of rooting for a villain, and the creator of the show literally wanted to see how far you could go with somebody that was going bad. Like that was one of his directives when he was making the show. But it's so compelling the entire way. And I love how realistic it is. I was actually talking to it's cool that we did this season this week because I was talking to a drug enforcer and I said, "What show feels the most realistic to you about drug enforcing and it's actually down in New Mexico area?" And he said Breaking Bad by far. He loves the show because it feels like he's watching somebody who understands his job. And when I heard that, I was like, aha! I'm gonna do this and send it to Josh. I think that is so cool. They took the time to do their homework and make each episode make sense. They made his fall make sense, and the ending of Breaking Bad, which I put a lot of. This is going to be hypocritical because we're going to talk about our number ones. They're the same later, and I hate the ending of the show. Breaking Bad is my favorite ending to a TV show ever. I think it is absolutely perfect. And I actually don't think the show works unless you have the ending the way that it is. But because the ending is the way that it is, it makes watching somebody who is a bad guy, who is breaking into badness, who is changing and becoming dark, make more sense. The other thing I liked about the drug enforcer, when I was talking to him, he said this happens all the time. Dads can't pay their bills, and then they go into some kind of drug trade. He says he sees this story happen again and again and again, and obviously it's a little bit dramatized. It's television, but it's done so well. That's that's it.
Okay. So let me bring up this little thing for you. You say it's great all the way through. I even the people that love this show. Obviously, I'm not one of those people. Even the people that love this show say you have to get past season 1 for it to get good.
I completely 100% disagree. I think the fall of our main character. I think both of our main characters are have great writing in this first season, and you're dealing with a guy who's never really done crimes before, and how does he deal with going into this crime life? He still doesn't identify as a criminal, and you get to go along this journey. You get to see his mistakes. You get to see his character changing moments. I, I I think the first season is fantastic. You get to see the way that he's lying to himself and he's lying to his wife. You get to see his arrogance and the idea that he should have had more than he has. Like his future was stolen from him. Without this first season, you don't have Walter White.
Okay. The next thing I wanted to address on that was uh, saying that I don't like it because of
Hmm?
taste, because I don't like rooting for a bad guy. I couldn't disagree with
Okay.
that more. I'm not against rooting for bad guys at all. I think I'm a bigger fan of the Joker movie than the two of us. Um, I 100% fully agree. I'm a bigger fan of Maleficent than the two of us by
Absolutely.
far. I think it's
I
a
don't like that
great
movie at
movie.
all.
I have nothing against rooting for a villain or, you know, doing that kind of stuff. I hate this because I think it's not intriguing writing
Interesting.
and it doesn't feel real to me. Because to me, the perspective that's given, and I think it was beautifully said in that YouTube video I sent you a long time ago. I wish I had knew what it was or who put it out there. But he talked about why some people don't like the Breaking Bad movies and why Breaking Bad is actually a bad show is because it's not about this guy. who's making mistakes and falling deeper in, that it's so real. It's written and perceived as, at least to me and some other people, that not only is being bad good, if it's your true nature, it's what you're supposed to be. Embrace your true nature, even if it's a total dickwad. And I could not agree more. I watched one and like a third seasons. I got just into the second season, and to me, it feels so much like, hey, I know you've been spending your life trying to be good, but you're dying now. So just be bad. Just embrace those urges. Be that natural self. It give in to that darker side. And it just, oh, it's so appalling to be delivering that message to me. That's why I hate it. That's why I think it's a garbage
Ki-
show. It's not because you're rooting for a villain, it's because the message is be a villain if that's what you're supposed to be. And to me, I think most people are good. Most people want to do good, and most people want to be good. And that's completely opposite to what the message of this show is. I would say that the filming of it is actually really sad. I don't like the way it looks. I think the music isn't very good. I think the writing is pretty poor. Um, all of that stuff on top of it, but yeah, it's not because you're rooting for a villain. It's because it's telling you, the viewer, to be one, um, which to me makes it absolutely
Instead
insane.
of the you have
Uh,
nothing left to lose because you're dying, so do some good in this world before you go. It's saying you have nothing left to lose, so stop holding back, is what you're thinking.
yeah, yeah, it's painted as Walter White was a villain all along. He just suppressed that portion of his personality because he wanted to be, or because he was supposed to be, a good husband. And a good husband wouldn't be bad. And a good husband wouldn't do that. And a good teacher wouldn't do that. And because he was suppressing that side of himself, he lost his job. He started teaching. That is
So you think that
100% the
maybe it
message of
would
the show.
be like if he was the bad guy originally, then his company never would have been stolen from him, and then he would have all the money in the world, and he wouldn't have had to do all of this meth cooking and everything that he gets into if he just would have been the bad guy originally.
Yeah, that's what the show is 100% portraying.
Interesting.
There's 100% a storyline where he's like, well, I could have avoided this whole thing if I would have just done this douchey thing.
I never took it as that. I took it as he made some mistakes in his past, and he takes those mistakes that he made, and then he learns the wrong lesson from them. Of he has to be this ruthless crime lord or whatever you want to call him, um, in order to be successful. When really the lesson was he made a mistake and he can make some shifts in his life, but because of the fact that he didn't take the time to shift, he is now in crunch mode and this is his only option. And then he figures out that he kind of likes this
It's not
option.
his only option.
It's his.
It's
That's
not his
true.
only
That's
option.
true.
He, from the very beginning, is portrayed as suppressing an evil side when you first meet him.
He does have the other option of going to his partners that he feels like scorned him and then being humble about it, which honestly I don't think most people would do. If they really feel like someone stole your life and your life's purpose from you, you're going to hate that person. And if you absolutely have to, if there is literally no other option, a lot of people will take the option of being humble, but it's going to feel terrible, and you're only going to do it for your family so that you can survive. But if there is another option, a lot of people would take that other option, including drug dealing, because people do it all the time.
Okay, but I just fundamentally disagree with you. I can 100% relate with the feeling of having somebody steal a part of your life,
Yeah.
steal an aspect of your life. I do not hate that person at all, and I often have to defend that person to this day. Okay? people fundamentally want to be good. I think the message of the show is people fundamentally, or not people. It's not saying everybody is. I don't think that the messages show be evil. You're naturally evil, be evil. I think it's some people are evil, and if that's you, be evil. It you'll be happier if you suck.
I don't
And
think so at all because you get towards the
I
end of the
disagree with that
show,
completely.
he is suffering for everything he did, absolutely everything.
Because he's a dick. It's natural
But
consequences. They're
he
not
gets lost
him.
in this game of finally feeling
He
powerful
gets
in his
upset
life,
and
and then
feeling lost because
he
he
gets
lost. He gets stuff taken away from him.
he gets the people that he loved taken away from him because he's made stupid
Yeah.
decisions, and at the very end,
Yeah, because he's a
he comes
dick.
to terms with that, and that's why the ending is so
No, he's
good.
forced to.
He
It's
is not
not good.
he is not
Moving
forced to
on.
do it. He
We're done.
literally chooses to
We're done.
go back into society at the end. He makes that choice.
We're not. Oh, no, he doesn't. Moving on. Uh, Still to this day, I don't know why you could put Arcane above it. Still, I mean, you clearly have a passion for loving it, but I think we can both agree, even though Arcane is one season, it is one of the greatest seasons of TV ever.
I agree.
What's up with that?
I think again season four and well, one second. I have to remember if Breaking Bad is 5 seasons or if it's four. I think it's five. How many seasons do they have of Breaking Bad? 5 seasons. I think season four and season five of Breaking Bad you could also put into greatest TV shows, greatest seasons of television of all time. And I, a lot of people will argue that Avatar: The Last Airbender has been dethroned by Arcane. I'm sorry, but I just don't think one season of Arcane can dethrone Avatar. I don't think that's the case. And I don't think you can dethrone Breaking Bad that has 2 seasons that I can argue are in the greatest seasons of television ever and a whole show that I think is brilliant with the exception of one episode, The Fly, which is a kind of a pointless episode. There's people who like it and I don't get why. Um I don't think that you could dethrone all of that with one season. Even though that season is brilliant. I just don't think that.
Hey, but your number five is one season, and I believe your number four is also just one season.
The number 5 is not one season, it's 3. Um, number 4 is one season, and there is a little bit of hypocrisy there. You are correct. It. That's a good point. That is a good point.
My whole argument is that the length of the show does not determine the quality of it or how much you loved it,
Yes,
right? My number one is a show that is very long, but I have watched it a ridiculous amount
me
of
too.
times.
Me too.
My number two is not a show that's very long. Um, 3 seasons. My number three is one season. My number four is 3 seasons.
A
You
lot
know,
of mine are fairly short after this.
I don't think that the argument should be how long it is because to me, some of the things that make some of these shows so great is knowing when to end.
Okay, I'll say this. Arcane is fantastic. It is a fantastic show. There is really not a bad episode. And I think its highs are, in my opinion, are equal to Breaking Bad. And that's saying a lot because there are a lot of people who would put Breaking Bad as possibly the best show ever made. Um, and I think the highs are on par, and there's just a lot more of those highs because you have 5 seasons of highs.
All right, my last question
Yeah,
for you. Uh, I'm not going to argue that anymore. I think I'm obviously right. But uh, season two of Arcane comes out this
yeah.
week. At least part one of season two does. If season two is as good as season one, how high on this list do you think Arcane would go?
I think there's a possibility that it could go up like 4 or 5 if it ends as well as season 1 ends, and it really does have like it feels like an ending. It feels like they did justice to the characters. A 4 or 5, it could be there.
Okay.
Let's get to your 5 through 2. Go ahead.
My number 5 is Psych. My number 4 is Avatar: The Last Airbender. My number 3 is Arcane, and my number 2 is Ted Lasso.
Okay, those are all great shows. Uh, most of those are great shows. I
They're all
think
great shows.
Psych is really good at the beginning, and for me, I don't remember what season it was. It's been too long since I watched it. It fell off hard, like hard, hard, hard. Um, what made you continue to love this show? Why do you love it as much as you do? Tell me more about it.
So the show to me um, was our family show. Uh, we gathered as a family to watch it. At least most of us did. I came from a really really big family, so having one thing at all that we all got along with to watch, amazing. And that was
It's
Psych.
huge.
Um, I have recently been watching it. I used to kind of agree with you. I used to kind of agree that hey, season 5 all the way up to like the last 2 episodes of the last season really kind of lost their groove. But as I started thinking about that more and just recently rewatched it, I don't think it fell off as far as I originally thought. I actually think season 5 is one of the best seasons now.
Interesting.
My old favorite was season 3. I'm loving season 5 right now. Um, and there's just these moments in the later season that while the season as a whole maybe wasn't so great, some of those episodes are some of my favorite episodes. And I think it's brilliant. I really don't think that it's a bad show um, until it comes to the movies that were picked up in, Psych, the movie 1, 2, and 3, or whatever. Psych, the musical was okay. Psych, the finale movie was okay. But all those Peacock exclusive ones, I have not really enjoyed. I think I've only seen one of them. Um, but the show as a whole is still great. I sent you the YouTube video. I think everybody should go on YouTube and watch this. After listening to this, it talks about why Psych fixes Sherlock Holmes, and it's the perfect Sherlock Holmes, and it's given me a whole new light to look at Sherlock Holmes in, as well as a new light to look at with Psych. It's a brilliant show. It's always going to make me laugh. It's always funny. It's quirky. It uses its humor to grow the characters. It makes you love the characters. Um, my honest to goodness biggest flaw with the show, and it's not even really a flaw, is I loved Abby as a character. I'm not mad that Sean ended up with Juliet. That's where the show was always going to go. I just also loved Abby. And she was only in it for such a short time. Thought she was a great, great character. Loved her and Sean together. Loved how Sean kind of matured with her in that way that he didn't with Juliet, which is just different. But oh my gosh. I still love Psych. Psych will always hold a special place in my heart. Doesn't get as much love as it needs to outside of Utah. Doesn't give as much love as it needs to anymore. When it was coming out, it's kind of a big thing in Utah, but not so much lately. And I think going back and watching it when it's not so the thing will help. help you appreciate those later episodes a
I
lot
am
more.
gonna rewatch it. I watched this. It is a huge thing in Utah. It just is. And I watched this when I was younger, and I liked the first couple seasons, but I just enjoyed it. That's it. It wasn't anything crazy, but it was an enjoyable show. And then maybe it was season 5. I honestly don't remember. I haven't watched this in a long time. It fell off hard for me, but I will give it another shot and see what I think. Maybe I'll like it more because you like it as much as you do. You talking about your family and bringing your family together, that's a huge thing because I mean that doesn't happen with all with a bunch of different kinds of shows. My dad likes the sci-fi type shows. I watch them with my dad. My mom's not into that kind of thing. My mom likes shows like Outlander or other things like that, and my dad doesn't really. Sister's kind of the same thing. A show that everybody loves is a huge deal. That's cool.
Yeah. And like even shows that I wouldn't say are very great, right? Like The Walking Dead, I think is really good for 4 seasons. Um, and then it really sucks after that. But the reason I still like the first 4 seasons as much as I do, um, it's because I watched that with my dad like every Sunday, and then even watched the Talking Dead thing that they did, talk show thing that they did after each episode. Um, so yeah, for me that's why it's so high on my list. It would still make my list if we were talking about just quality of shows. I still would put Psych in my top 10,
Interesting.
but it makes it as high as I do because of those reasons that I love it so much
That's
for
cool.
sure.
Now, Avatar: The Last Airbender, obviously a fantastic show. I
Yeah.
genuinely, I actually didn't see that this was on your, that Arcane was on your list, and I brought up that I think that some people think Arcane is better than Avatar, which I think is crazy. Why do you think Arcane is higher than Avatar? Why is it higher for you?
So I used to say Arcane is or Avatar the Last Airbender is the most perfect show, right? It's good for all ages. It's good beginning to end. No episode is wasted, all that kind of stuff. Um and I still believe it's up there. But I believe it was topped out by Arcane. Um I know Arcane is only 1 season and season 2 could drop it on my list for sure, but the show is only 1 season right now. And I think even if season 2 never came out, I would still love season 1. I would feel cheated about the
Cliffhanger?
cliffhanger, the word I'm looking for. I would still feel cheated about that. But holy crap, what an intense, great, beautiful show, animation. The fact that they took the chance and they did 3D, 2D combo. The music is phenomenal. The characters are intriguing and deep and complex, and there's so many of them, right?
That's a good point.
Like when I think about Arcane, you think that Jinx is the main character, but Jinx isn't in the show till like the last few
Yeah,
episodes.
that's true.
And then you're like, okay, Vi's the main character. Vi's really the main character. And then you're like, but hold on, what about the other side of things? What about like Caitlyn? What about the guy I can't even remember his name and the city council and Heimerdinger and oh, what about Echo? And how does this show that is only 1 season long, it's like 12 episodes, I don't even remember, but it's not that long, have so many deep, complex, intriguing, beautifully written, designed characters? Holy goodness. That to me is what puts it just a little bit above Avatar The Last Airbender. I didn't watch Avatar: The Last Airbender too much later in life. I mentioned it previously in a previous episode. I was like, "Oh, that's for nerds. That's for little kids. I don't do that kind of stuff." So I would never really give it a try. Meanwhile, I was watching iCarly. Uh, but I still love Avatar: The Last Airbender. It is still one of the most perfect complete packages of shows, but at the same time, I didn't watch it when it was coming out. I binge watched it. So a lot of people who had that anticipation for the finale, which is a brilliant finale, I didn't have that.
That's fair.
No anticipation. I just watched it and then it was done and I was like, "Oh, that was cool." And I moved on. Arcane is anticipation episode to episode, minute to minute, just hits the right chords with me. Um, Talks so much about some serious topics, is so enjoyable to younger crowds. Uh, its biggest downside, and I think the only downside right now about Arcane, is that you have to say, well, it's based on League of Legends. Because even if you don't say that, they'll be like, isn't that based on some video game? And you have to go, yeah, it's League of Legends. I know it's a dumb game and it's a toxic universe, and I know, but I have to be like, but you don't need to know anything about League of Legends every time, and that is the only downside to Arcane. Um,
That's fair, man. Yeah, because when
so
I talk about Arcane, it's the exact same thing. Isn't that based on League of Legends? And I say I played League of Legends maybe 3 hours of my life. That's about it. Um, I didn't know anything about it, and Arcane is damn near perfect. And you're right. There's a lot of
so far it is perfect. It's
great,
great.
great characters in a very short period of time. And you think about Avatar, you think about Uncle, you think about Zuko, you think about your main three, you think about the grandma who isn't in it very much, but she's great. You think about Azula and her two sidekicks. You think about the Fire Lord, and the Fire Lord honestly is not as good of a. He's an interesting villain, but he's not as good of a character as the main bad guy in Arcane. I don't remember his name.
Who is the main bad guy?
Um, I would say the main bad guy is the drug lord dude. Yeah,
Silco?
yeah, that guy.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah,
I don't think it has a bad guy.
really.
That's another, yeah. Uh, if you're talking like he is a bad guy, but I don't think he's the antagonist of the show. Um, because I don't think the show currently has an
That's
antagonist.
interesting. I think he is placed as the antagonist because he's the one who is your main component against the good guys. Your main component against the father figure.
Who's the good guys though?
The father.
Outside of the first episode when all that kind of stuff goes down,
I would.
who's the good guy?
Vi.
Is
I would
she?
say so. Yeah,
She kind of betrays her own people and her own life.
because she's young and stupid, but she doesn't mean to betray them.
Not originally, but she still does in the end. She still takes the other side. To me, the antagonist of the show is the separation between the wealthy and the
Okay,
poor.
interesting.
That is the antagonist of the show. The driving factor of the conflict is not some person, it's not some guy, it's not even the lower city or
It's
it's
an
not the upper
ideal.
city, right? They're not saying, "Hey, the rich guys are bad because they're rich." And it's not saying the poor people are bad because they're poor. It's,
There's just a war of
man, the
society.
division between these two people and the prejudice that is created from it is what is driving all of these
That's interesting.
motivations.
That's a good point.
Like, I think Silco is a bad guy, for sure. Drug lords are a bad guy.
But there's more to it than just that.
Um, but it's so intriguing, and you can see where Silco's coming from, and you can see his drive and his passion and why people follow him even after all that stuff. You have all the characters that are his followers. You have
And you
the scientists, and on the rich side you have the scientist duo as well, and why they kind of push their boundaries and go outside of their
And
rules and
everyone's pushing
regulations
greed
and
within their own societal structures. Kind of like Avatar has the Fire Lord that is the main bad guy, but you have Azula, you have the Earth King, you have that whole cabal that's around the Earth King that's controlling him. You have a lot of different influences besides just your there's a bad guy.
yeah. And like to me, Avatar: The Last Airbender, like I said, it's still the most perfect show. But those first couple of episodes, when they meant for Zuko to be the bad guy until they had a rewrite, is a little inconsistent in the
Interesting.
show.
Okay.
Um, right? Like if they had originally planned everything out, like his switch to the good side, he wouldn't have been so irritating or so hateable or whatever it may
Because
be.
he's cartoon
Um,
villainy until they make him
yeah,
much, much more than that.
yeah. So like he ends up being a really interesting and dynamic character, but that happens like halfway through season two,
I
right?
would
So at the
I
like,
would
if you're talking
say
about
it
just season
happens
one,
in
how many interesting
season one.
characters do you have?
Um,
I'd say you have four. You have Iroh,
yes, yes,
Aang,
yes.
Tara, and her brother. I can't
Zuko.
remember his name. Sokka.
I think Zuko is actually
Right. Everybody else is just kind of like a
I think
character.
Zuko is interesting towards the second half of the first season because I mean you can't go through the Water Nation attack and not find his character interesting in my opinion. I actually like the general pretty well too. I don't know why I can't remember his name right now, but he is also an interesting
Zhao.
character.
I don't think that Zhao is an interesting character. So here's
Yeah,
the thing, right? So halfway through season one, they had a
yeah.
rewrite, right? Halfway through season one, they decide Zuko really isn't working out to be the main villain. So they introduce Zhao,
And he just
right?
kind
Like
of fills in
Zhao
for
is
the
just a
until he
placeholder,
dies.
right? They didn't make him interesting until way
He,
later.
way later. What do you mean? Like it was interesting in that first season. I thought. You don't think
I
so?
don't think so. He's just a filler. And I think it's season two. They build on his character, um, and kind of explain his motivations a little bit
But
more, and maybe
he
where he came
dies in
from, and
season
all that
one.
kind of stuff. Like that's what
Uh,
makes it.
do they?
Yeah,
I don't remember them going into his character arc in season two.
when they start going into Zuko's background, they explore Zhao as
Oh
well.
yeah, yeah. You're right. You're right.
Yeah. So that to me is the weakness of Avatar: Last Airbender. Still, I actually think that the way it ended up working out is great. I think having him be a comic book
Kind
villain
of works.
or a cartoon villain kind of lends itself to his overall turn to the good. Um, but if they had done it intentionally, it could have
Okay.
been better.
Um, the
Um,
next show on your list is Ted Lasso. I
yeah.
I almost put this as an honorable mention because I love the first season, 2 seasons of Ted Lasso so freaking much. They are fantastic. I didn't like season 3. I like parts of season 3 a lot, but the overall show I thought dipped quite a bit. Um, I honestly was surprised that it was this high on your list. Why was it this high? Did you think there was any kind of dip in quality?
So there's without a doubt season three is the weakest of the three. But just like Psych, I don't think that that means that
Okay.
it's bad, right? They definitely spend a lot of time on things that are unnecessary. I don't like the episode about uh, Coach going on his acid trip.
Interesting.
Like, what a waste of an episode. Really don't like
It's
it.
actually one of my favorite episodes of the
Not like
entire
a
show.
bad episode. I yeah, a lot of people love it. It's kind of quirky and
I
funny
think
and
it
whatever.
explores depression
Um,
so well, like insanely well.
I think the rest of the show explores depression even better,
Interesting. I agree. The rest of the
right?
show
So season
really
one
really
and
good,
two,
but
right?
I love the way that it's explored depression in that episode. Anyway, I cut you off. Go ahead.
Yeah. So season one and two, um, I would say would be my motivation spark towards what this podcast,
Interesting.
right?
Okay.
Um, what a it made such a big impact on my personal life, right? What a message about the power of positivity and teamwork and what it means to be a leader and, you know, not suffer in silence and to deal with things head on and forgiveness and all of those things. Like, how incredible. Um, I had a sister growing up who literally, like, I was quite a depressed, awkward kid. Oh, why does no girl like me or whatever? And my sister would always come back, no matter what I was complaining about, no matter what I was saying about myself, no matter what was going on. She was like, attitude is everything, Josh. If you just go out and expect to like something, you'll be more inclined to actually like it. Or maybe you'll give off a better vibe and maybe that girl will like you or whatever. Attitude is everything. Attitude is everything. And I never really like internalized that until I watched this
That's
show.
really cool.
Because after I watched this show, I went out and I was like, I want to stop watching so much hurtful, terrible, dark, depressing shows. Um, so much like let's like Psych, right? Like it's not like a dark, depressing show, but it doesn't inspire that to be better and positivity and all that kind of stuff, right? And after I watch Psych, I go, "Oh, that was funny" or whatever, and I move on with my day. But Ted Lasso was like, I actually want to be a more positive person, and I actually felt how watching and consuming positive media impacted my life instantly. Instantly, I was in a better mood. Instantly, I was more open and honest with people. Instantly, I tried looking for better things. Um, when I bought my motorcycle, I did something really powerful and so little it was ridiculous. I looked up. I had always been a guy who looked at the ground when walking, and depression was very real and all this kinds of stuff. But when you're riding a motorcycle, you have to look up ahead of yourself because you're moving and you're so lightweight, you need to see what's ahead. And I had this moment in Orem, Utah, where I had driven University Parkway, I think it's Parkway, so many times. So many times. And this time I was on my bike and I came over the hill and I saw Utah Lake at sunset. I noticed it that day because I was looking up. And that one little moment changed my mood. Ted Lasso did that one little moment times 1000 for like months afterward.
That's incredible.
Months afterward, I was like, I don't want to watch this. I want to watch something more positive. I don't want to read that. I want to read something more positive. I want to go out and I want to see better, more beautiful things. Ted Lasso did that for me. Now, let's talk about the season 3 critique of it. I don't think that season 3 is bad. It's a drop off in quality. However, I think that one teaches something that is really important to me and that I think a lot of people need to learn more. And that's you never know what's going on in somebody's life, right? Ted Lasso, main character of the show, brilliantly written through the season, actually starts showing his demons he's been hiding through season 1 and 2. And I think it makes season 1 and 2 better. And like you have all of that kind of compounding. You have the message that like, hey, therapy's not a bad thing. You don't have to feel bad about going to therapy. How great was the line about, well, why are you being paid to coach if you love coaching, right? Oh, okay. Well, that part was good in season 3. Okay. How about the I love you and fuck you scene with his mom? Okay,
That's
well,
that's one of the parts
that
I'm
was
talking
just one
about.
of the most
It's great.
powerful,
It's
most
a great part.
meaningful moments in all of television.
Fantastic part. Absolutely.
What a brilliant piece of writing. What a brilliant way to portray it. Actors did a fantastic job. You could not change one little thing about that scene. Happened in season 3.
Yeah. fantastic parts of season 3 for sure.
So yeah, that is why Ted Lasso for me is number two. I understand Arcane and Avatar: The Last Bender Airbender are better quality shows. I understand that. Yeah, I'd probably put even Chernobyl as a better quality show. Um, Only because season three is just okay. Other than those shine moments that are just brilliant. So that's why number two, those shining moments, plus what it meant to me and how it actually changed my life. Still struggle with depression, still struggle with all of those things. But man, Ted Lasso is a great lesson on how to be as a person. Um, it's a lot, it shows a lot about what modern masculinity kind of should look like. Um, and I think that's a really powerful message, especially in this day and age. I think it's amazing, um, and something that people should take a better look at.
Yeah,
But yeah,
that's very cool, man. That's a cool story. That's a cool. It's cool that it affected your life that much. And I absolutely love, to your last point, how the show doesn't make. I feel like a lot of shows just make men idiots, and in Ted Lasso, they're not. They're inspirational. They're wonderful. What's the little guy's name? Nate is Nate the Great. Um,
yeah,
I have some struggles with him in season 3, but I love how Ted takes the time to care for this little guy who doesn't really believe himself, but there's something great inside of him. And how much better would the world be if men took the time to look around and see greatness in people that they didn't see in themselves? I love the part in the first season where Ted just continues making these treats for the head lady who owns the team. What is her name? Um, anyway, just keeps making treats for her. And regardless of how bad things are, how negative people are around her, the weird society is to him, he just keeps making these little acts of service over and over and over again. Just keeps this bright attitude over and over again. Believes in people and goes down to their level individually. He goes down to Keely and specifically talks to her about what she's struggling with and how to be kind to her. It's not a I'm kind to everybody. He's very specific with his kindness. And what would the world be like if people really took the time to care the way he does in this show? It's awesome. It's an awesome show.
yeah, for sure. It's great. Yep, 100%. Okay, let's get on. Your five through
All
two,
right.
please.
My number 5 is Dark. Number 4 is Blackbird. Number 3 is Star Wars Rebels, and number 2 is Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Okay, so I want to talk about how most of your shows are newer, within the last 10 years kind of shows. Do you think there's any recency bias there?
Um, I don't think so. I in my honorable mentions, I have a lot of older shows on there, but these are shows that I've watched over and over again. Everything on this list. I think Your Lie in April is the only one that I've only seen twice. Um, and each one of them has either influenced the way that I view things or influenced the way that I take things in, and I have come to love all of them. Star Wars Rebels, I really, 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 really enjoy Clone Wars, but nothing has had a profound impact on me like Rebels did. The last season of Rebels made me want to be a hero, which is one of the things that I love in TV. I love in movies, I love in books, is things that make me want to be heroic and want me to stand out. Avatar did a lot of the same thing. It made me want to believe in people changing and becoming better. It made me want to enjoy higher quality material, writing that really spoke to you, writing that inspired you. At the end of that show, you just feel full. Blackbird is about a a guy who is in jail. He was a drug dealer. He's in jail, and they give him an opportunity to go and try to get a possible serial killer to confess where a body is. And he decides to change his life, become something a little bit better, be a little bit different. And part of that is by seeing darkness. But darkness needs to be seen if the light is going to be contrasted. Dark is one of the best written shows I have ever seen. It would make a book proud. A lot of these shows have to be a little bit more shallow because they are in a TV platform versus a book platform. And Dark is so freaking brilliant. It made me want to up what I took in because there's a lot of fluff that people just watch, and then there is just absolute masterpieces like this show. I I thought a lot about every choice that I made on here, and I thought a lot about my honorable mentions. There's a lot of good shows out there. I think I was fair with my choices.
Okay, fair enough. Why don't you just go ahead and push through honorable
All right.
mentions?
Honorable mentions: Vikings, Pushing Daisies, Castle, Mindhunter, Battlestar Galactica, Dead Like Me, which is in my if I were to do an underrated shows, it would be number one on my underrated shows. It's about a girl who dies and she gets assigned to be a Grim Reaper and she's handling other people's deaths. It is hilarious. It's dark comedy, very funny. Um, and it takes the serious nature of death very good. So you have these dark comedy and these serious bits, and it handles it really well. It's a show that I wish would have been more popular because it only got 2 seasons, and it absolutely deserved more. Then Midnight Mass, we talked about that one earlier, and The Bear. If I had liked season 3 better, it had a possibility of being on the list. It's a really great show. What about your honorable mentions?
I've got a big pile, and honestly, there's probably more to say, but this is what I have on my list: White Collar, House MD, Bones, Midnight Mass, Haunting of Bly Manor, Attack on Titan, Sword Online, Star Wars, Clone Wars, The Bear, Rising Impact, The Office, The Big Bang Theory, and Altered Carbon.
I'm actually just curious. What is Rising Impact? I've heard of all these others. I don't know what that is.
I sent it to you. It's a newer anime. There's only one season so far. It's about golf.
Okay, cool. I actually
Yeah. It's really good. The humor is really great. The pitch for it is: what if the Knights of the Round Table, like King Arthur's Knights of the Round Table, played golf in the modern era? Like the main characters' names are actually the Knights of the
that's
Round Table. They straight up steal the
interesting.
names. Yep. They all have their own special, unique abilities, and they all correspond with what was like
Hmm,
in the legends, their special talent.
cool.
Um, it's really great. It's so much fun, and the funniest thing about it to me, a golfer, is they teach real golf.
Really?
Like
That's
yeah,
cool.
there's a moment where the main character learns to keep his eye on the ball, and he hits it way further.
That's awesome.
Like it's so great. Didn't make my list because I think there needs to have more to it. It's good right now. They're planning on making more. If more comes out, and it might end up making my list, it's really good. I like
The other one that I just added was Freyrin Beyond Journey's End. I didn't add a whole lot of anime, and I love that show. I was surprised at how much I love that show.
Oh, it's brilliant, brilliant show, absolutely amazing.
Um, okay. What actually our number ones are literally the same show. It's How I Met Your Mother.
Yep,
Um,
yep.
I have watched this show not as many times as Josh. I don't know how many times Josh has watched it,
Few people have.
but I've probably legitimately watched this show 5 or 6 times all the way through. It's it is the show that's the most funny to me. Every time I watch it, I laugh every single time. It has heartfelt moments, and the heartfelt moments are impactful to me every single time. I love these characters. These characters were with me at a time in my life that was just extremely pivotal. I watched the show when it was coming out. I was in my teenage years. Everyone else around me that wasn't watching Psych was watching this show. Um, I it's not a perfect show. There are plot holes in it. There's some problems.
Disagree.
There's like I was literally just watching it yesterday because I wanted to get ready for the show, and it has Marshall at the very beginning of the show, and he's like, "I've never been in a fight before," and the gay guy beats the crap out of him, and I'm like, "You literally changed that in like half a season from now." But okay, there's a couple little things like that. They're not that big a deal. It's a sitcom. The heart of this show to me is it's a message about hope. Things go really wrong over and over again, but they stay hopeful. They keep going. It's a message about how you can change if you push forward and that it's not easy. There's a part where they actually make a joke out of it, but it was in episode 3. I watched it last night, and they're out drinking late at night, and Marshall is like, your boy, he's going to push forward and he's going to get an A. And then Ted is talking to the kids, and he says, and he did it. In 12 hours, he wrote a 20-page paper, and he got an A. Nah, never mind. He got a B minus. The fact that he decided to push forward, he decided to experience life that night and still made it through school, but it wasn't an easy thing. It wasn't just a he got an A no matter what. That's the show. And this show keeps you going, trying to figure out who this mother is, but the mother isn't the point of the show. The point of the show is hope. The point of the show is that even on these worst moments, these moments where you're left at the altar, the moments where somebody dies, you've got family, you've got hope. The moments where you're lost, your friends are your family. The moments where maybe you're not as connected to your brothers and sisters, you're not as connected to your dad, you're withdrawn, things aren't going right. You've got your friends, and they are your family, and it's going to be okay. And there's hope. Just keep going. That's why I love this show. Why do you love it, Josh?
Almost everything you just said. To me, it's not hope; it's persistence. There's a large portion of the show, um, specifically about why when Ted lost hope. Um, but other than that, it's about continuing going. It's about the persistence of it. It's about not knowing where you're actually going to end up. It's about not being able to plan your life. Uh, I just moved to Hawaii a year ago or a month ago. I never in a million years would have planned that or thought that that could possibly happen. But I'm here now. You know, um, it's about the persistence of it. From the very beginning of the show, Ted wants to fall in love, meet the right
Episode
girl,
1.
um, but he's not ready for it. It's about him needing to change to be ready for it. It's about him needing to have those experiences, those tear downs to to change himself, to adapt, to overcome, and to push through with, like I said, persistence. To me, the thing that puts this sitcom, however, so far above the rest of them is its ability to be so real. Um, I've told you about this before, but things that when I view a real man break, break me. They hit me so hard. So the episode when Marshall loses his father, Marshall is such a real man, and it breaks him, as it should, um, especially with how close him and his father had been throughout the entire show. What a crazy ability to say, hey, this show is so funny, it makes me laugh all the time. To have an episode like that. An episode about hope. It's literally called The Countdown. It's counting down to Marshall and Lily announcing that they're pregnant, only to say, just kidding. This unexpected thing happened. Marshall, your dad died. Um, the ability to do that in this kind of show is what truly, truly, truly makes this show absolutely amazing. It's so real to life, and not in the like, this is what people experience, but how they experience them. Um, which will lead me into the elephant in the room, the 33,000 pound gorilla, the last season. This show is so brilliant and has such a phenomenal ending because the writers had a plan all along. It makes the rest of the show better to go back and enjoy it. And it's so real to how people experience life. Let's go ahead and get to one of the criticisms. The wedding was like the entire show or the entire last season, and not all that could happen in just 3 days. Well, let me ask you
Mhm.
this, Conlon. You're a married
Yeah,
man. Yep. How was that wedding day for you? How did it feel in terms of time
absolutely rushed for sure.
in the moment?
Like you are talk to the next person, talk to the next person, talk to the next person, talk to the next person. Oh, it's done. Next, let's go. Absolutely.
Okay. To me, that's the brilliance of this show. I think it shows that some moments in time feel like they drag on and that are so impactful, like a wedding, where so much can be happening, but everything, oh my gosh, there's so much that happened in that
Mhm.
day, right? Um, how did all of that kind of stuff happen in just that short period of time? I have moments in my life that I can relate to with that. There's also moments in my life that's the next criticism. Well, they just mentioned the divorce in the last episode, and they're like, okay, it's all done, and they'd been building up to this for so long. Man, don't some of those most painful memories and hard things you went through in life, in hindsight, feel like that was such a small part of my life?
Yeah.
I think that that is intentional. I think it's brilliant. I understand that, oh, it didn't feel as satisfying as if they'd stayed together. We've had this argument. Um, I'm sure you're going to talk more about how Barney had changed and grown up so much through his relationship with Robin. And to me, he didn't. To me, he was still so much of Barney that it never would have worked. I think having them break out, get divorced is perfect. I think it's 100% realistic. And I also think it's 100% realistic that having the thing that actually makes him want to change and be a different person is being a parent. I'm not a parent, but I can speak to the difference I've seen in my siblings the day that they become parents. Go ahead,
All
Conlon.
right.
Give your
I
arguments. Tell me why it's so
I
bad.
hate the ending of this show. Um, to me, the show is about hope. There's perseverance too, and sometimes you're borrowing hope from other people. There's one of the great things about the show is when Ted is down, or when Marshall is down, or when Robin is down. There's a family member, there's a friend, there's one of the other main characters to pick him up. And when Barney is sick of being who he was for so long, he has all of these people that love him, and they say, you can change. You can be different. And being different doesn't mean going back to loser hippie or child who just wants his dad to actually give a crap about him or even know who his dad is. He doesn't have to go back to those things. He can progress. Life is about progression. And there's nothing sadder to me in the entire world than just going back to who you used to be. Especially when you spend 4 seasons taking Barney, who is a very interesting, well done character, and he consistently moves forward, moves forward, moves forward, moves forward, has a setback, moves forward, has a setback, moves forward. And a lot of that is because of Robin. But it's more than just because of Robin, it's because he wants to move forward. He wants to be somebody different. The show is about hope. It's about persistence. It's about becoming something new. It's about not recessing to who you used to be. And in that last little bit, you have a character who you've taken this entire journey with, a very, very well written journey. And he recesses. My problem isn't the divorce. It isn't completely the divorce. I think the divorce has a problem that you have Robin, who has been career, 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 and she decides that this love is worth more than the career. So the idea that she then goes immediately and chooses the career doesn't ring true to what we've experienced. But I can kind of buy it. It's not something I like, but I can kind of buy it. The idea that as soon as the divorce happens, Barney just becomes a player again, I find absolutely ridiculous. Because he didn't just do it for Robin, he did it because he wanted to be different. And if you just recess to who you used to be, the depression would be so unbelievably maddening. I have literally been the person who has changed and then gone back to who I used to be. And I was a little bit of a player. I went back to being that person. It makes you feel terrible. And I honestly, truly believe that if Barney went back to who he used to be, he would commit suicide. And the end of this show, to be realistic, would be Barney is dead and everybody is coming back to see Barney's funeral because he committed suicide, because he left who he was and he left the progression. I hate, not don't like, I hate what they do with Barney at the end of the show. It is the reason I don't like it.
Okay, so let's take a pause
Yeah,
right there because you hit on the note that I say is
yeah.
great about it. It's realness.
And that's what I think,
You say it's unbelievable, but you literally just said that you had done that.
but not to his level, and not to the level of trying to change that he did. We went along this entire journey.
It's a show. It's a little extra,
It's not a.
right?
It is
I think you hate
so
it because it
extra.
hits too home
There's a
for you,
possibility of that, man.
and it's. I love it because it's brilliant. I also have gone through something like that, and you are absolutely correct. The depression is horrible. But to say that him reverting not to a previous personality, I think that's exactly what people do when they go through such traumatic experiences. They have, trauma
I th-
responses. There's only a few of them. Reverting to where you were last comfortable is 100% what a lot of people do. And he was last comfortable as a player, and reverting to that person, 100% real. And I do agree that if he had continued on that path without having a kid, it probably would have ended that way. But he did, and that changes things. And that's why it's
I don't.
brilliant.
There's a couple things. One, that's why I'm okay with Robin becoming somebody who is a workaholic again. I don't think that that would happen, but I can see it because you revert. I think her char-
I don't think she ever chose not to be a
I think that was
workaholic.
part of her
But go
getting
ahead.
married to Barney. I do think she made that choice. But I'm okay with her going back because I think it makes some sense with her character. I don't like it. It isn't what I prefer. It doesn't match this tone of hope that I believe is part of the show, but I can kind of get it
So
on a
let me
realistic
ask you
level.
this.
Barney, I don't think after the hell he went through that he is going to change, going to go back. Part of the reason that I went back to who I used to be is I go on this LDS mission and you go into a different place. And there's a lot of people who, when they go to a different location, that it opens them up to become different people. It's a very common thing. It's part of psychology. There's a story that I read in high school that I never forgot of a person who's in high school. He's a giant dork, and then he goes and becomes part of the military. And in the military, he finds fulfillment. He finds a calling. He finds a direction. And when he's in that military space, he becomes that person. And then he comes back home. He's retired from the military, and he's around the same people that he was before. And it slowly starts to seep back into him this this identity that he had before of this shy little dork, and he starts to see himself become that person. So he leaves again because he can't stay there. And I could see someone who had to leave to change coming back and becoming a lot of who they were before. Barney did it in his hometown. He did it around the people that he knew. He did it around the people that he loved. He pushed through. He did all of that work, and a baby just solves the situation. No, I don't believe that. Even if he didn't die, if he has a baby, I believe that he is a player person, and it doesn't really change him. Either way, you have a sad ending. Instead of choosing the happy ending where they just get married and they're happily ever after, you have the happy ending where he has a baby and then he's changed and everything's happily ever after. Either way is stupid and doesn't work with the character.
Okay. Can I talk now?
Yes.
Let me ask you one question before we get into the rest
Yeah.
of that. At what point does Robin put love above career? She doesn't.
You have that season or
She does not. She chooses to get with Barney after she's already the face of the show. She continues to do it. She does not revert.
she
She
just
just
continues along the road.
continues doing with what she's comfortable with. She does not revert
Okay.
at all. Barney 100% does revert. Yes, 1000%. No, a baby does not change and make everything perfect, but it does change a lot of perspective, especially when you have something you're responsible for. Barney 100% reverts back to what he's comfortable with because that's when he was last comfortable. And I find that 100% believable. Okay. Uh, you're talking about how he changed it in that place, right? I can speak from experience that his environment is still a revolving door and he still has a lot, like, he's still reverting to his comfortable self, right? Think all the way back, right? Who was Barney before he even met Ted?
A hippie.
Player. He was a
No,
player. He met Ted when
he
he
met
was a
Ted when he
player.
was a player. Okay, I see what you're saying. Yes.
Yep. Yep. He met right before that. He was a hippie who got
Hmm?
hurt, right? So being good hurt. Then he became a player and it didn't hurt so bad. And then he met Ted and then he kind of got tired of it and then gnawing feeling kind of ate at him a little bit more. And then he decides to try and be good again and then it hurts again. That person, I believe, 60% of the time, 70% of the time, really high, most of the time, is going to revert back to who they were most comfortable with. And that was Barney pre meeting Ted after he was hurt the first time. He has established a pattern of being that person already. So when he gets hurt again, when he goes through a divorce again, when he gets hurt, when love hurts him again, speaking from experience, the person who's been hurt by love so many times, even though you're in the same place, guess what? That relationship with that person who you thought I was going to marry, I was in my hometown. I was with these people, you and your wife and Brandon and Ellie and all of these people who loved me. Guess who still reverted to their high school depression loser self? Was that the first time I was hurt either? Nope, that was not. So you can say you don't like it. I get it. I understand that as a viewer it feels rushed and it feels like, oh man, that really hurts that character, but I don't think you could call it not real. And to me that's what I love about the show. Not everybody has to agree with me, but that is 100% real. I do believe that that would hurt Barney. I do 1000% believe he would be the kind of person to revert to being a player. A biggest argument, he already did that in his life. Repeating that and getting back to where, hey, it didn't hurt so bad, 100% believe it. Yep, 1000%. Mm-hmm.
I don't.
Yep,
I
yep,
don't
yep.
think he would go back at all. It doesn't make sense to me. Like I said, I think Robin could. I think that's possible. I think even I don't. We haven't gotten to the other characters at all, but I think even Ted possibly could. I don't like that either, but it's possible. Um, I don't think Barney would, and I also don't think that he would have had the capabilities to be the person that he was before. He isn't working the same job. Part of the reason that he could do the player thing and I'm an astronaut this day and I'm a Olympic ski jumper this day and whatever his plan is because he had buckets and buckets of money. He doesn't have buckets and buckets of money anymore. He fun
Yes, he
no, he
does.
doesn't.
Yeah, he
How?
does.
He's not working the
A,
job that
he had he had the job. B, he does have he's already proven he's an excellent business person, whatever. C, we established Robin is super wealthy, and guess who he just divorced? And D, like, he doesn't even have a job. That's how much free time he has when the divorce goes down. He doesn't even have a job. He's clearly doing well enough. He
Yeah,
doesn't
he's
need to
doing some
do
little side
anything.
business things, but I don't. He's not going to have the same amount of money as being an executive on Wall Street. He's just not. It's going to be a very different world that he's living in, and the fact that you're not working is going to change your trajectory. If he wants to work in an honest field, which I actually think he would probably do, if we're trying to make the character make sense, I think he would go to something honest at that point. Um, then that is going to change him.
It doesn't show him working at all. The only thing it says is that he's doing his blog still, right? And to say that he wouldn't have that much money, let's see. The show came out early 2000s. Let's just say he was investing like he should have been 1/5 of the money he was making. You don't think the bounce back from 2008 to 2010 would have set him up for life to keep living off of dividends and that kind of
I don't think
returns?
he's the kind of person that's investing like that. I mean, have you? We watched the same show, and he was throwing away money like it was left and right. He's throwing away as much money as he possibly
Yeah,
could. He doesn't seem like somebody who was.
but he always had more
That's
money.
because he was working at a job that paid him buckets, so he could just spend
Yeah,
it and spend
he's
it and
got
spend
so
it.
much.
But he just keeps spending it and spending it and spending it, and then he doesn't have the job anymore. There's a lot of there's a massive amount of professional football players that are getting paid buckets that are broke, and he is the kind of person that is
Yeah.
spending buckets of money. I don't think he has anything left.
Do you know what the difference between Barney and those people are?
No, what do you think the difference is?
All of these football players, all of these things. There's a show on Netflix actually starring Dwayne the Rock Johnson, talking exactly about this thing,
Interesting.
about how these football players and NBA players, athletes in general, make these millions and then retire broke. And it's not because of what they're spending on themselves. It's because everybody in their lives comes out and asks for a handout. And so many of these football players and NBA players and whatever go out and they start, sure, you can live with me. Sure, here's $1,000. Here's a Ferrari, right? They start setting up their families. How many of these football players bought a house for their parents?
I'm sure a lot.
Most of them. What's the first thing you did with your first million, right? So and so, oh, I bought a house for my mom. That's like what they all say. Like all of them. When did Barney spend buckets of money on anyone else but himself?
He took people on limo rides and stuff like that, but and some of those nights would have been very very expensive, but not buy people house expensive. That's true.
Yeah.
He didn't
So
like,
you're right. He is making buckets and buckets of money. And yes, he bought a TV that was his wall. And yes, he paid to have the statue
and
put
he's
up in
paying
his
thousands
room
of dollars
with
for
a headstone.
strippers and all that stuff.
Yeah. He is spending tons of money. Nobody is arguing that. But, have you ever sat down and been like, I did this a few years ago. How much would it take for you to get everything you could possibly
I
really
have
want?
done that.
Right? Right? So for me, it was like, I want a decent house. I'm single, I don't need a big house. I just need a decent house. I want a cabin. I want a go-kart track, right? I want this, that, other. It was like $2.5 million, right? In the grand scheme of things, that's really not that much. And Barney was making so much freaking money. I don't find it hard to believe he would be investing some of his money because he has just so much to spend. But anyway,
Yeah.
all that aside, I still believe it's 100% realistic towards Barney's character. Like I said, he's established a pattern already. He repeats that pattern. People do that all the time. That's that's just what people are, and it's so real and it hits home. It's so real. I'm not saying that it's a good thing. I'm not saying that, hey guys, remember when you were most comfortable and you do that, and regardless of whether it's good or not, or whether or not it is, people people are that way. People do that.
So I just looked it up, and I don't know how realistic this is, but this site approximates his earnings to being 1.173 million a year. Um, and that's a lot of money. And they estimate that he spends $900,000 or not, sorry, $90,000 a year just on suits, just on his suits. If he's spending 90,000 just on suits, can you imagine how much he is spending on strippers? I don't know.
He's he's spending a lot. I'm not saying it's likely or whatever. Is it believable? Sure. Why not? Who are we to say what he was doing with his money? He could have been paying with the strippers on those dividends he's living off of
It's
now.
possible, man.
What if he invested every penny he actually made from that
It's
paycheck?
possible. Now I need to ask the creators of the show if he was saving money. I gotta know.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Irregardless, right? The only thing that is actually established in the show is that he's running a blog, and then it leads to the divorce. Like I said, a lot of people are hurt that they fell in love with this character. They love the development. The way I view it is he is reverting and going back to a comfortable state until he has another reason to not be that way. And for me, that's the kid. I don't think he's wanting to be that way. I don't think he is permanently that way, but is reverting to that comfortable state so that he can heal. And I find that 100% believable. And like that, I don't view the kid as the savior. I think that that would be a terrible message to send. People who are listening, don't have babies to fix your problems. That is not a good thing. Uh, but I do think it would be a wake up call and give Barney that reason to go back to being good again. Because I don't think he betrays that. I don't think he loses all the growth. He just sets that aside to be comfortable. Um, and that's to me 100% real from personal experience, from things that I've seen people go through. This show is real. And it is, I think it's not just plausible. I think it's realistic that somebody like that would make that decision and make those choices and do those things.
Okay. I understand where you're coming from. I disagree when it comes to Barney, um, but that's okay. Whatever you guys think, list it down below. Obviously, I have gotten pretty.
Well, most people are going to agree with you.
If you like Josh's points of view, they are different from anything you're going to hear online. Talk about it. Argue against, argue for. He is, as far as somebody fighting for the ending being good, He has the best points that I've personally heard. I just, when it comes to Barney in particular, very obviously strongly disagree. Now, if we go to Ted and Robin, a lot of people also don't like this. I don't like it, but it isn't the burning hatred that I have like I do with Barney. It's just kind of disappointing. Um, I think that Ted obviously would have changed a lot by finding the woman that he's actually wanting to be with, and the show should be then about really pushing forward and wanting to love and be with the kids, but it just turns into wanting to be with Robin again. And Robin has made very clear that Ted's just not the one in my thought process. So even if Ted does go back and we have your point of view where people go back to who they used to be, I don't think Robin would accept that. It doesn't make sense to me with the character, even with how cute this little blue French horn thing is. And in my opinion, they filmed this ending in season one, and they kept the kids on NDA so that no one knew what the ending was going to be. I think they should have just scrapped that. The show became so much bigger than they ever could have planned for, and you don't need to keep the ending that you planned in season one for a show that expanded so much past that. I think that was a mistake and not a great choice.
I think it was a perfect choice. And I think it ultimately boils down to how you view love and how you view God.
Okay.
As weird as that is. And in this kind of comparison, right? Uh, to me, the writers are the representative of God. Um, do you believe God has a plan for you?
Yeah.
Do you believe you're going to hit certain aspects along the way? Do you think you're going to end where you're planning to be? And maybe it's the right person, wrong time. Uh, for me, the entire show, from episode one all the way till the end, the last season, right? You can't really count the last season too much because that's when Ted's getting with the mother and that's when he is accepting that part of his life. But up until that point, so much of the show is Ted and Robin would be together if Ted could make those changes in his life to be ready, actually ready for it rather than just wanting it, and if Robin could take that chance, right? So Robin's finally ready to take that chance. She took that chance with Barney, right? She's ready. She's ready to take that chance, right? And a lot of time goes by between the divorce and Ted and Robin at getting back together. And like I said first, I think it boils down to how you view love, um, especially for a significant other. Um, I consider myself a hopeless romantic, and I always have been. I think you have a different perspective, and that's totally okay. You definitely came up from the player perspective of a little bit better. Um, but there's so many people who say, once you fall in love with somebody truly, that love never ends. I can tell you, I have fallen in love with three girls, head over heels, 100%, absolutely. 150% of me still would love those girls today, still loves them. I still absolutely want what is absolutely best for them. I want them to be happy. Um, one of them absolutely hurt me in every possible way that is, you know, that came from that, right? This is the person that I have to defend all the time. People that say, "Oh, well, she sucks for doing that." And I'm like, I promise she's really a good person. If she ever listens to this, I hope you know that I'm not bitter or hurting or, well, I am hurting, but like, I just want her to be happy. Without me in her life, all three of them, I just want them to be happy. I want them to find what is right for them in their lives. And I think that Ted and I have that same perspective of love. How, it kind of changes in the way that it feels and the way that it matters to you. Um, so like for Ted, he kind of puts it aside and he falls in love with the mother. And I'm not saying he doesn't genuinely love the mother. I think he does. But for me, in an internal perspective, right? Sorry, from the mother's perspective, Ted was the right thing to get her back on her feet until she could get back to her soulmate. Ted is not her soulmate.
Hmm.
The original boyfriend for her, we learned so little about. He dies. She gets depressed. She tries dating this guy. Not really feeling it. Ted gets her through to the end of the show when she dies, and she gets to go back. She is reunited, in my perspective, with her soulmate. So, from that perspective, Ted's just supposed to be alone. He's not supposed to have somebody. And he's ready, and Robin's ready, and they take that chance. And I, through the entire show, was rooting for Ted and Robin. No, they're not the perfect couple. Yes, they have problems, but they grow and develop so much throughout the show that by the time the end of the show is taking place and they're like what 60 or whatever, that they take that chance where all of that heavy weight like kids and life and everything is already gone and done, isn't going to put them in a place where they can actually succeed as a couple, they can be ready to be a couple. That to me is how I view it. That's what I truly believe. um
The idea that the
Love
mother
it.
is her real soulmate was the one that died is a very interesting idea that I've never heard before. I both like it and don't like it because I obviously like the idea that Ted and her were meant to be together, and that's part of the reason both of them goes through so much tragedy. But it's an interesting theory. It's an interesting idea, for real.
Why can't both be
That's true.
true? I mean, both are
That's true.
true. They are meant to be together. They are meant to have kids. They are meant, right? That is part of the plan. That is part of the bigger picture. They are meant to fall in love with each other. But that doesn't mean they're soulmates.
Interesting point of view.
That doesn't mean, like, I have a perspective of time and all eternity, right? I think she dies, she goes up into heaven, and her husband, or her and her boyfriend at the time, look down and watch their kids get raised and root Ted on. And Ted and Robin die. And then it's not Ted and Robin and Lily and Marshall sitting on the porch. It's Ted and Robin and Lily and Marshall and the mom and her husband and the kids, both Marshall's and Ted's kids, sitting on the porch.
I like the idea. I also had a pretty unbelievably terrible experience with an ex, and like her, we were ready to get married. Bad, bad situation. I also defend her a lot, and I also still think the world of her. I think she's a wonderful person. Um, and I think that in a lot of ways I wasn't a wonderful person, and there were a lot of good growing opportunities because of that. The person that the mother is when she meets Ted and definitely by the end of their relationship is not the same person that she dated this guy for a couple years, I think is what it was. It's not the same person. And I would say that the person that she's become, if a soulmate is a thing, would be more inclined with who Ted is. And that this goes into a lot of religious aspects, like who do you become at the end of your life, and does that match up with the person that your soulmate has become as she's been in heaven, or if there was a separation there? There's a lot of religious theory behind that. But I think with the person that she becomes at the point of death, it would be more connected with Ted. On the other side of things, if I got the opportunity, would not want to go back and be with this girl that I had major issues with. Um, if I had the opportunity, it is not what I'd want. I want some answers from her. I'd like to talk to her at some point, but I wouldn't want that relationship again. I think that through most of the show, you do have this Ted and Robin thing, for sure. Ted, I feel like, still has that connection with Robin, even towards the very end of the show. And I could see him still having some sort of love for her, even connected to his wife, even finding this person that he's supposed to be with, that he has the kids with. I can see that, but in my opinion, Robin closes the door on that. Multiple episodes she closes the door. And the final episode, where it's like, I think it's called something blue, she has this final freak out about maybe being with Ted. And I think that they close the door on that completely. But later, not that much later, like a season later, they're together in the show. And I think that she came to peace with that. She closed it off. She was okay with that.
Okay. Let me just
Yeah.
address that. So, two out of the three of mine, I would also never want to be with
Okay.
again. One, I would be open to. I'm not sure, but I'd be open
Okay.
to it. So, I'm not trying to say there are or are not soulmates. I think that in this show, you do, right? You have these characters that are meant to
Lily
be.
and Marshall, it's a very
Uh,
big component of the whole show,
yeah,
is that they were
for sure.
supposed to be
Yep,
together.
absolutely. Um, but when it comes to Ted and Robin, right? What are their big issues ultimately, right? Big issues are difference in opinion on where they want their lives to
That's
go,
true, but another big issue that I think you're
right?
ignoring is the fact that Robin is not in love with Ted anymore, and she brings that up. Ted might still be in love with her, but she's not in love with him anymore. And that's a big deal. Even if you get rid of all the boundaries that are in between the two, which there are a lot, there were a lot that are, you're right. I think you have a good point. Genuinely have a good point that Robin didn't want to have kids. They don't have to worry about that anymore. Robin wanted to do the career thing. She's done the career thing. That's been taken care of. Ted wanted kids. He's been able to do that. All these little issues, all these bigger issues that are in the way. But if Robin doesn't love him, it doesn't matter.
Okay, so again, I think this all boils down to how you view love, right? Is love a feeling?
Partly yeah,
Is love a
partly
choice?
yeah.
Is an obligation? Is love work? Is
Yes.
love this, that, and the other? Okay. Let me ask
Hmm?
you this: how many women have you heard of or talked to who said, "I fell out of love with him in a day or a moment or moment in time"?
I've heard that on TV. I've never heard that in a real life situation.
I have heard that so many times it's
That's
ridiculous.
interesting.
I know of so many women who had just, oh, you know what? I woke up that day and I didn't love him anymore. And then I continued dating him for 3 months and then I broke up. Women, stop doing that. It's terrible.
Interesting.
Do you believe people can fall in and back out of love? Do you believe, right? Like, I believe 100%. And I think that the biggest difference here is a perspective of men and women. I actually think it's way easier for women to fall in and out of love. Or, yeah,
Interesting. Okay.
I do agree with you. I think Robin shut the door, but I think it was at that moment in time. That doesn't mean she wouldn't fall back in love with him.
So let me ask you this: do you think the relationship works? Like, if the show continues on, do Ted and Robin work?
Yes,
Interesting.
I think they work as a couple, save for those bigger issues, right? Save for the fact that they had different values in life, right? He wanted kids, he wanted to get married, she wanted career. I think the rest of the time that they're together, every all the moments they're kind of in denial of that, they work brilliantly as a couple. They're a good couple, right? Private, whatever, sergeant, whatever, right? That's a stupid little joke that only couples would find funny.
Couples are like
And it's
best friends.
brilliant. Yeah, same thing. It's they're just a good couple. They work really well together. They're dynamic, they're different, but really help each other a lot. Ted helps Robin grow so much. Robin helps Ted grow so much. The fact that they build each other without tearing each other down is awesome. It's brilliant in the show. And so them being together at the end where all of the big issues are taken care of, yeah, I think they're a good couple.
Hmm.
I don't think they're quite the Lily and Marshall level of great couple,
But few people are.
but they're a great couple. They're a good couple. Yeah, they're good. And so to me, yes, Ted always loves her. Yep, in a way. Yeah.
They're
It changes and webs and flows, but he always does.
they're not they're trying to say, I think, that there's a happily ever after. The reason that I don't hate it, it's just kind of disappointing to me, is I feel like it doesn't vibe with the show and where we've gone so far. But when I've seen that scene, I see her laughing in the windowsill, Ted going upstairs, them talking. Maybe they even try dating. I kind of think Robin would just be like, "We've tried this. We're just really good friends." And I think he would actually get friend zoned in the next scene if we kept going. So I don't hate it because I could see Ted doing what he does. It makes sense with the character. And I think Robin would literally just be like, sorry, bro. But we don't
I
know.
don't think so. And I think it's because the show develops the characters, right? If this was just before Barney and Robin really tried to be a thing the
Hmm?
second time, 100%. Robin is still that person who would say, we've tried this, we've been there, we've done that, have all those anxieties, all of that kind of stuff. They even have that conversation, right?
Yeah.
When Ted tries to get back together with her again,
She's like,
right?
sorry, bro.
She's like, we've already done this. We've done
Yeah,
this. It's not going to
it's done.
work. You still want to have kids. And I think we can agree that Robin has changed a lot between then and the end of the
Yeah,
show.
there's truth to that for sure.
And Ted has grown and changed a lot to the end of the
Massively.
show.
That's why I think there's a possibility that they do date for a little
And
bit.
even
I
though
just don't think
it's
it'd work.
one season, you're talking about years,
Yeah, you're talking
right?
about the
You're
entire
talking
kid's
like
lives. So
decades.
the oldest
Yeah.
kid would
You're
be
talking like 20
15
years.
years old. So yeah, 20 years, something like that.
Yeah, you're talking in the decades realm. Uh, yeah, I disagree with that. I think they're still a good couple, and I think Robin is actually willing to give it a shot, especially at that time in her life,
Cool, cool. And then we have Lily, and
right? Because that was the big hang up.
then we have Lily and Marshall who end pretty good, and that works out well.
Yeah, for me, the last thing I wanted to bring up about why this show is so
Yeah,
brilliant is how we as people, especially males, we want to be the Barney. We want to be the good-looking guy who gets all the girls, who's
and
so
can do whatever he
funny and
wants and
so
has all the
likable,
money and
get away with everything, and has all this money. And then you go through a point in your life and you go, man, I'd kind of like to be a Ted, but it kind of sounds sucky at the same time. Like he goes through so much garbage, And then you go through a point in your life where you're like, Marshall. Marshall's the guy. I want to be a Marshall. You
Yeah,
know, uh, the way it can speak to so many different generations and people in their lives with those different characters and things to aspire
it's
to.
amazing. And
Brilliant,
it's
brilliant, brilliant.
incredible that just from the guy's point of view, you can associate at different times with each character. And I think the women are written really well too. I in high school we had a giant friend group that would all watch this show, and the girls would talk about the girls and how they related their stories and how they were intertwined, and the guys would talk about Barney and Ted and how they would connect. And you both saw ourselves in these characters because they were written as well as they are. That's a pretty hard thing to do. Because for example, with Friends, I I like Friends. I don't love Friends. I like it, but I just kind of enjoyed the male characters in that. They're just enjoyable characters, and it seems like a show that women identify with more. And maybe that's part of the reason why I don't love it as much as I love How I Met Your Mother, for example. You don't have the writing isn't as evenly balanced, and it's incredible how evenly balanced it is.
To me, that's the big separator as well. I think Friends has some moments that are good, but I think most of the show is pretty weak. And the show doesn't develop the
No,
characters.
it doesn't, not at all.
Rachel is still Rachel at the end. Ross is still Ross. Monica is still Monica. Things happen in their lives. The only one who changes it all is Chandler.
Yeah, I
So of
yeah
course he's everybody's favorite character.
yeah. Rachel changes a little. Well, the other characters change a little bit, but it's very very minor.
But I don't think they do at
You don't
all.
you don't think Rachel
I
changes
think
some?
where they're at in their life. No, I think she just has a
She just
job.
has a job and a baby.
She's still Rachel,
Yeah, she's not
right?
fundamentally different. Where
She's still fundamentally
Ted
different. She
is
didn't change her
fundamentally
character
different.
at all. She just has it. Yeah. So,
Cool, 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 cool. Well, that was
anything else you want to bring up
nah.
on it?
It's a wonderful show, and if for some reason you've never seen it, give it a try. When you read reviews, people will say they don't like the later seasons. I don't get it. I think it's a fantastic show from the beginning to the end. I even like some of the later seasons, like season 4. I think is my favorite season. 4 or 5. It's great. Just give it a shot. It's worth it. I've got some friends that won't watch it because they don't like the ending, like I don't. But even me, the person who cares so much about endings, the rest of the show is so valuable and helped me get through things, helped me see things in a better light, helped me persevere, helped me have hope. It's worth it. It's a fantastic ride, and you should take it.
Sounds
That
good. If anybody wants to guess how many times I've seen this show beginning to end, I'll give you a shout out. But that was our top 10 list.
Thanks for watching, guys.
11.
See ya.
Bye.